Welcome to the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, where there's always another secret.
And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies. Today, we are recording episode 28 on April 1st, 2019. And in this episode, we are finally back on Roshar in Book 2 of the Stormlight Archive, Words of Radiance, where Brandon has decided to teach us what life would be like in a tide pool. I am Bill, and as always, I am joined by my illusory co-hosts, Amy and Jordan. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Don't eat the tide pools.
Yeah.
No, it's a tide pool?
Yep. It's a tide pool ad.
All right. Well, again, just as a reminder, for those of you who listen to the podcast recordings or watch the videos on YouTube, we want to remind you that it is possible for you to join into the discussion and interact with us in real time via chat as we record each episode live at www.twitch.tv/InKeepersTable. We record our episodes every other Monday night, starting at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Please, come, talk to us, join us, take part in the discussion. Let us know what you think is going on at the Cosmere. So, welcome, guys. I am excited because it's been so long since we did something but from Stormlight.
I know, it has been a long time.
Yeah,
And this
feels like half a year ago.
was it really half a year ago?
I don't know, to be honest, but
Probably.
it feels like it.
It's been
That
a
sounds
while.
about right, actually.
Dang it, now I'm going to have to go through our own
Hold
backlog
on.
and find out.
We can find this.
I can look pretty easily. I've got the schedule up
Oh,
right.
then how about you do that? That'd be quicker.
Way
this
of
is really
Kings,
important.
We finished in
Yes.
September.
Yeah, so
That
that
was
was
our last
that was
Way of Kings.
6 months ago. At least 6 months ago. My gosh.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Talking about the Cosmere.
Yep.
All right, well, now for our listeners again, like we did with The Way of Kings, we are going to be splitting up this book because it's really, really, really long. And so we're splitting it into 4 episodes. We're going to do the same sort of thing we did last time. We're going to split it into 3 major plot threads. One for Shallan Devar, looking at Pattern, Shallan's flashbacks, her journey to the Shattered Plains, and the search for Urithiru.
All that stuff.
We're going to look at Kaladin's Stormblessed and Syl, Bridge 4, Moash, and Kaladin's journey to the Third Oath next episode. And then after that, we'll take a look at the Kholin family, Dalinar, Adolin, Navani, Elhokar, and Renarin, the conflict with Sadeas, and the war against the Parshindi. And then after that we're going to fill in all the cracks, just like, Investiture does. It fills in the cracks.
Or just fill it in with creme.
We're going to fill it in with the interludes and the epigrams.
Yes.
So
Not much happened in those, though.
now, before we dive in, though, we do have an announcement to make. If you do join us for the live recordings, Amy is not going to be available in 2 weeks, so we're going to actually be recording early. I believe the plan is to record next week. Is that right, Jordan?
Sure.
All right. So we'll be recording next week at the same time, 7:30 Pacific, 10:30 Eastern.
And we'll make sure to announce it on all the social media stuff.
We'll let everybody know about that. But just if you want to be here for that live recording, now the episode's going to release on the same normal schedule, so you'll actually get the episode a little early if you're here for the recording. So, hey, and
Huzzah.
so make sure to join us here then for that. So this episode, so last book in the Stormlight Archive, we started with Kaladin because it was Kaladin's book. That's who was in charge of the flashbacks, and so this time we're going to give Shallan first billing. So, before we dive into the plot, I kind of want to take a look at Shallan as a character. We've discussed in the past that each of the major Radiants that we've discussed or that show up in the book have something sort of disorder, something broken inside of them, something hurting, something that sets them apart, which is what's necessary for the Spren to come in and kind of fill the cracks, right? And I noticed this, and Shallan, we're starting to see kind of the glimmers of what her story is. And since we discussed the last book and the last time I read this book, for a completely unrelated reason, I've actually read up a lot about dissociative identity disorder, and it's kind of amazing to me how spot on Brandon has hit that disorder, that situation.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of people hear dissociative identity disorder and just they immediately think, oh, multiple personalities. They become different people, yada, yada, yada. But a lot of that is the dissociative aspect that people miss. And when we look at Shallan and the conversation tends to lead to somewhere that she does not want to go in her head, her mind goes blank. And she sort of separates from herself. I don't know. It seemed really interesting to me because that's one of the trademark signs of DID.
Damsel in distress.
Yes. No, it really was interesting to me, especially because I've met a couple of people who have dissociative disorders, and so it just really stood out to me, and it was fascinating how well he hit the nuances of that. Now, I can't say it from any personal experience, obviously, so I may be wrong about that, but that's just sort of the impression that I got as I was reading. And
it totally feels like a defense mechanism for her, though.
And that's sort of at the root of DID. A lot of times it stems from a trauma, and Shallan has some trauma in her life.
Her life is trauma.
I mean,
her family really gets involved in things, don't they?
My gosh, her family is so messed up. The thing that I like, though, this is one of the things that I love about Brandon, is, especially in this book, it feels like there's a strong theme of redemption. There are characters who cross lines, who go far beyond what they ever intended to do. And Brandon has, in this book especially, there is just so much evidence of allowing characters to redeem themselves and come back from the brink. But the thing that's cool is that it's not necessarily easy. I mean, they have to go through a lot to come back from that, but it's very, very possible. And I think that's one of the reasons this is one of my favorite books that Brandon's done, is that is such a strong theme. There's so much hope involved in this book.
Yeah, the only thing that is painful for me is dealing with all of the dark parts.
Oh, there's a lot of dark in this book.
Yeah.
It goes
I really
to
like this, but it goes very dark.
It goes into some of the hardest places in any book that Brandon's written, I think.
In her flashbacks, because this is now the second time I've read it, it's very interesting once you go through it, knowing the fact that her father wasn't the one who killed her mother.
Yes.
And
which makes it so much different. Like reading it, because you're like,
Well, the first one where she says this was wrong, monsters don't deserve to be held. And you realize she's not saying that about her father. She's saying it about herself.
Yeah, it's about her.
And it just breaks your heart.
But she does force herself to forget that, and she embraces what everyone else thinks, that her father's the one who killed her.
She goes and she doesn't say it, but she doesn't correct them either.
Well, to the point where I think she starts to believe it, and I think her father encourages that.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting because it's one of these things. They talk about how secrets tear a family apart, and you see how it sends him spiraling down to
Yeah.
this abusive hole because he's trying to protect the one kid at the expense of everyone else, and he's clearly got a loose grip on reality as is.
Oh, yeah.
And so that trauma breaks him, which breaks everyone else, and it's just this, downward spiral for everyone.
Yeah.
At the same time, they're all getting involved in things way above their family's head.
It's kind of interesting, though, that she's the beginning spark of how everything gets broken, but there are a couple times when she tries to improve things by helping her
succeeds
siblings.
in it.
Yeah.
Actually, that's one of my favorite scenes in the entire book is the flashback at the fair where she meets Hoyd.
I was struggling so much to figure out who Hoyd was. I was like, that can't be Hoyd, can it?
Oh, that's absolutely Hoyd.
And I tried to figure out who it was.
No, I forgot that Hoyd was in her flashbacks as well.
It totally explains like one of my other favorite scenes that I'd forgotten about, where Hoyd is driving the carriage after he's been gone for a while and comes back, and then Kaladin's like, you, and he's like, me, and then Adeline gets out and he's like, you, me, and then Shallan's like, you, and he's like, me, and she's like, I'm gonna hug you.
Yeah, that is just one of the most touching scenes because he
doesn't know what to do.
It was just such a brief interaction, but he did so much for her in that interaction. Because, and I think the thing that he did most for her was when he pointed out that Wickham was doing the math problems that she'd given him. And that
she had made
some
a difference.
little bit of healing had already begun. And but the whole scene with her and Hoyd, the other thing that was really interesting is that we see, like, she notices Hoyd pull out a pouch of something and then he drops it into his own drink. Did you notice that?
Yeah, it's lemonade flavoring, clearly.
No.
I think I had, but I'd forgotten about it when I got this far in the book because I've been struggling to finish it.
So do you know what was going on there?
I saw your note, but I didn't know what it was.
Needed the caffeine hit.
Okay, so here's a Cosmere external spoiler warning. It's good, but he was actually metal. He was putting metal into it because if you remember, if you've read Mistborn's Secret History, Hoyd picked up a bead of Lerasium.
He did.
And somebody asked Brandon, about that scene where he put something into his drink. And Brandon, of course, got all cagey about it. And he said, let's just say that Hoyd wanted people to feel a certain way at that point in time. And so Hoyd was rioting her emotions. And, because she was talking,
reread that again.
She was talking about how she felt better and more comfortable. And he was not soothing her, like capital S soothing, but he was helping her feel better and more confident and just more. And it's just, again, it's one of the most, just the sweetest scenes. I feel like Hoyd has a soft spot for Shallan. I don't know if it's because she's a light weaver or if it's because she's just who she is, but he seems to have a soft spot for her.
He also seems to have a soft spot for kids in general, because there was that other scene
with in Oathbringer with the doll.
So and so I mean, there's just and he met her when she was a child, so I think it probably continued. That was probably, at least I can see that being a part of it, is that he knew her as a kid, so it continues.
But even when she was young, he was very open with her. With the other kid, he just did something to cheer him up. With this one, he specifically starts talking to her. He mentions the shards. He mentions the nature of lights. He recognizes that she's bonded to a cryptic. He talks about how she doesn't understand the where lies fit into the world, and he talks about how he was that way once. And he bonds with her.
I agree with Hokey Bentley in chat. I've long thought that this is because of something he left behind on Yolen.
Yeah,
I could see that.
Hokey Bentley says, "I imagine Hoyd had a daughter. I would not be surprised at all." But I feel like there's a soft spot for her in particular because he talks more to her about things.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to just. To say that wasn't the case, but I just noticed that he seems to have a trend of at least 2 times with kids versus adults.
Speaking of another
that's a
character
general
that
thing.
sort of gets softened because of us getting to see things through Shallan's eyes, Yasna, for what little we get of her in this book, which is really for the worse, but I like this book anyway. But we start to see Yasna's mask less.
Oh, yeah, that scene on the ship.
The moment she walks in and sees that Yasna is afraid. When she sees the single fear spread. She says, you're not just afraid, you're terrified, because Yasna has such control over her emotions.
Yeah, that if one can peek out, then that's a big deal.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that I think it's a very good scene to show the character of what's going on. And it's interesting because I'm now in the middle of Oathbringer trying to make sure I have full perspective of what's going on. And seeing Shallan regress in Oathbringer is kind of frustrating because she grows so much in this book.
I wouldn't necessarily call it regression, but I would say it's almost more of a... Because she doesn't go back to what she was.
She just is finding
she
herself.
Goes back,
as much as that phrase irritates me.
She goes back to avoiding issues instead of taking them head on, which she was starting to move towards.
It almost feels like she's going through like a teenager phase, even though she's not really a teenager anymore, because she's pushed a lot of boundaries and grown up a ton in Words of Radiance, and then she gets to Oathbringer and other things, and she has all this room to expand, and so she waffles back and forth trying to find what works. Well, and sometimes she goes a little too far.
The other thing is, looking back at the dissociative identity disorder, it almost feels like in the third one she fully dissociates from those different identities. In this one, there's still kind of aspects of her.
Yeah.
And in the third book, she actually assigns them names.
Yeah. Well, she starts to assign them names in the second, in Words of Radiance, but it's not quite so firm.
Well, except that, with Vale, it feels more like this is...
It's just a pseudonym.
This is a pseudonym.
Yeah.
In the third one, it's almost like Vale is a person and Shallan is a person.
Yeah, well, because Vale starts talking about, Shallan is such a pain, and...
Yeah, and she has a third one, the sword one, too.
Brightness Radiant.
Brightness. Okay.
Brightness Radiant.
But this isn't about Oathbringer.
This isn't about
Oathbringer.
Sorry. So, but
it's too easy to just go
but that's
between
what
them.
I'm saying. The difference is that it seems like is that in that one, she puts all of the positive aspects into those two, and then Shallan is left without them.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that I find very interesting about this is beyond the really good scene when after she sees Yasna die. She goes to Shadesmar. She soulcasts the boat, which I have always found her soulcasting the boat to be a very powerful scene.
Oh, absolutely.
Just because, even though it's a boat, just the fact that she's, going here, they're dying, and she convinces the boat to give up being a boat so that it can sort of fulfill
Hopefully
what
save
its
people,
job is, which is, taking care of the sailors.
Yeah. Well, it's the very first time that she consciously soulcasts. And
then she has
actually works with Pattern to do so.
Yeah, and it's just, I find it interesting. She's able to get this grand boat to work, and then there's the famous stick scene afterwards.
I am a stick.
The thing that's interesting about it is like the whole conversation that she has to have with it, and it makes Yasna's soul casting in the first book seem a lot more powerful because she turns 3 living, conscious, sentient beings into fire and smoke and stone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
in an instant.
There's a very interesting. I read this on the Cosmere subreddit. Someone noticed that scene in particular, where if you look at what Yasna does to those people, it actually, like, the elements she transforms them into sort of reflect their attitudes at that time. The aggressive one gets turned into fire. The ones fleeing get turned into smoke. The one that froze gets turned into crystal. And just and it just sort of shows that where she's on this next level, and it shows how much Brandon has really, really thought through soul casting. So when you get to Shallan first is able to soul cast the boat, but she's able to do it because she appeals to the boat's identity. Then she gets to what you think would be easier, the stick, and she can't get the stick to change because it has just no identity beyond I am a stick.
Actually, I find it amusing that this is what we're talking about today, because a few years ago, Brandon released a, quote, deleted scene from Words of Radiance, and it was entirely consisted of I am a stick, I am a stick, I am a stick, I am a stick. And it was on April Fool's Day that he did this. So.
Oh, nice. So I part of why I think she had an easier time with the boat was that she'd spent time with the boat, and it had that identity, like we've been saying, and so she understood the boat and its rationale and the people that it was used to taking care of.
That's the other thing. Yeah, she had a connection to the sailors themselves. I mean, she had been on that boat several times now.
Oh yeah, for several months, like on the trip to finally get to Yasna.
Right.
I'm totally saying her name wrong now. Yasna.
Yasna.
The J throws me. I want to do
Jasna.
Anyway, so yeah. But yeah, I think her having the connection made it easier. I still don't think it was easy for her, but it was easier than the stick that has no connection to people.
It's interesting. I wonder how much this scene was influenced. I know that Brandon Sanderson is a fan of Robin Hobb. She's another author who wrote a series of books called The Live Ship Traders, where there are several ships that are actually sentient and bond to their families and develop relationships, and I feel like this scene was probably influenced by that series at least a little bit.
I could see. I haven't read them, but I've read her other series, the Assassin one.
Yeah, this is the Live Ships is a sequel series to the Assassin.
Okay,
so.
But no, the other thing that's cool is when she finally gets off the ship, and at first she's just trudging along, and then she happens upon Yasna's trunk.
She doesn't happen upon it. Pattern shows her.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Pattern finds it.
Pattern finds it, and he's like, hey, I found some stuff.
Early Pattern is funny just because of how stupid he is.
He's cute. He's endearing is what he is.
I love how she talks about imbecilic because it's like trying to climb the wall and falling down, and then tries to climb the wall and falls down.
I just love it when he can't understand eating food, and he's just like, horrible! For the record, I tend to not like Kate Redding. That said, her voice of Pattern is definitely... Why is that not muted? Anyway, adding muting phone to my show checklist right now. That's not on there. Just going to add that right now. Why don't you guys say something pithy?
Oh.
Jordan is adding something to his checklist right now.
That's not pithy at all.
Totally pithy.
Anyway, so Pattern reminds me a lot of like little kids, which I'm sure it was intentional.
Yeah.
But it's just funny to watch it because I'm sitting there going, I can remember my kids doing the same thing, and you're like, why'd you do that again? You knew you fell and it hurt, but you do it again and again and again.
Yeah. Slam and Ammon in chat actually makes a good point. He says, Imbot, if you like Pattern, read Skyward. Imbot is Pattern 2.0.
I still need to finish Skyward. I haven't gotten very far. My reading has gotten bad.
Horrible.
Her voice that she does in the audiobook for Pattern is, I think, perfect. I love it. She captures the buzzing quality of his voice, I think, very well. And
I haven't heard it.
Oh, I enjoy it a lot. And to be honest, like, it might be one of the reasons why I like this book so much more than the first one. Is just Shallan's chapters are now full of Pattern, and Pattern is
Pattern's fun.
I just love how confused he gets about things.
Oh yeah, it's hilarious because he takes some things too literally, and then he's trying to figure out her humor and sarcasm and everything, and she puts so much of it in to kind of keep things more chipper and light and stuff. And poor Pattern has to figure it out. No, what's literal and what's not, and what's a joke, and all the idioms too were pretty fun. How he's like, wait, why do you say that?
One of the ones I love is when she's like, because he talks about how much he likes Adolin because Adolin respects his shard blade, and she's like, if you like him so much, why don't you marry him? Oh, is that? No, that's not a thing you can do. Oh, like he's just sort of like he thought like that's interesting. How can man, I don't understand the rules of this place. You guys are so inconsistent.
Oh, I can't wait for the scene in Oathbringer with the.
It's so good.
I know exactly what scene
That's
you're
a fun
talking
one.
about.
The
no
where
mating.
he needs to be no mating. That one has to be chaperone.
Gosh. All right, so of course, after she's got Yesna's things and she's tried to convince a stick to turn itself into fire, Shallan comes across a character we haven't seen for a while.
And if he's lucky, never gets seen again.
The overconfident one. Tvlakov.
So of all the chance meetings that occur, this one's the most like,
this one probably, yeah.
A bit of a stretch. 'Cause everything else, I think there's a really good explanation for all of them. But
it makes sense that he'd be in the area, but it's still a little bit.
It's a little bit chance. But the thing I like about it is this is where she really starts putting Yesna's training to full use. Like she like the whole line of power is mostly a matter of perception, and because I love that conversation she has with her early on, where she's like, but if I were here, I would still be a princess and a bright lady and all these things, because I know how to carry myself, and you need to be able to do more of that. So she takes control of the caravan by doing just that. She gets the raiders to come and help them by just doing that.
And she had tested out before when she looked at the Santhid and insisted on it, which was a really fun scene too. That was really pretty.
I want to know what's going on with the Santhid.
I totally think it's like a dolphin intelligence, dolphin level, like it knows what's going on.
It saved her.
Yeah, because it totally did.
It pushed her onto the shore. Her conversation, her relationship that she develops with, it's very brief, but with Bluth, the guy who's driving the wagon, who works for the caravan. Yeah. I found that a very interesting study because, she talks to him, he grunts, rolls his eyes, and doesn't think much of her. And she can also tell he doesn't think a whole lot of himself, but, he's just like, I'm a slaver. This is my life. This is who I am.
I beat things up. I water things.
And she's, and she's drawing and distracting herself, and she decides, I'm going to draw him not as he is, but perhaps a little bit better. And she shows him, and he just sort of exactly. And she shows him, and he kind of grunts and rolls his eyes and looks the other way. But that night, she notices that the page has been torn out of her sketchbook, and it's just sort of it's a very poignant thing because he doesn't think much of himself, but suddenly he sees him a little bit as he could be.
Well, and I love how she mourns, like after she gets back, she mourns Yesna, but then she mourns the loss of all her sketches that she's done throughout her life, which is one of those things that she knows it's way petty compared to Yesna, but anyone who's done art like that can relate to understanding to losing that and all that work. And when she starts drawing Bluth the first time, she feels like it's a bit of a shame that she's starting her collection again with that. And I just love that line after, he died giving himself up to protect people. She realizes, no, he was, perfectly fine to start with.
Yeah, he was good for that.
And then I love she wears his hat while she's doing stuff with tin. And that's the other thing she does really well in this book. She learns very well to play with people's expectations of her. And so Tin starts being like, so this is clearly your con. This is interesting. Oh, it's a pretty face con. Yes, this is what is occurring right now.
Well, and
it
honestly,
totally is.
Honestly, that's the best way to fool somebody is, if they have a preconception, you just convince them they're right. Mm-hmm. And you don't deny it. And I mean, after all, it was their idea. You didn't try and convince them that. So obviously they're not being fooled. Mm-hmm. In fact, you tried to convince them of something else.
Yeah, because Shallan does try and say no, but it's, tries to correct her a couple times and then goes, no, I'm just going to go with it because it's not worth it to fight it.
Mm-hmm.
But I love how much she learns from her as far as, all this con work stuff. And then when she finally realizes, oh, crap.
Yeah, I knew that moment was coming up, but I couldn't remember exactly where it was. So when I started into that scene, I was like, oh, this is the scene where you see her shard blade.
Right.
So,
what?
And I caught a lot more hints in like the flashbacks and earlier scenes of her with the 10 heartbeats. It was there a lot more, and I was a lot more cognizant of it, that she thinks of her shard blade, even if she doesn't want to acknowledge that she has it.
Well, that's the other thing that's interesting, though, is that even though she thinks of her shard blade, she doesn't acknowledge what kind of shard blade it is. She thinks of it like any other shard blade. She thinks she has to wait 10 heartbeats to summon it. Mm-hmm. And she technically doesn't. At one point, when they're being chased by the Chasm Fiend, she talks about how she could send Pattern to distract the beast, but that would be a problem because ...
Yeah.
Because Kaladin's holding her shard blade.
Yeah, because he's right there.
It's just such a good scene.
Really, really good foreshadowing that when you read back again, it makes sense.
So when did you guys figure that out? 'Cause for me, I'd figured this part out. Like
which part?
The fact that Pattern was her shard blade.
I didn't until
I honestly don't
it was
remember.
Right there.
Okay, that was one I figured out fairly early, but I didn't understand why. And then then when Kaladin catches that one guy's shard blade and it starts screaming, that's when I made that connection the first time.
Oh, that it was that he caught the normal shard blade and goes, why do I hear the screaming, and then why am I catching this one?
Because I'd figured out that he was a shard blade, but I hadn't figured out why he was a shard blade, and then that happened and I figured it out.
Now, question: when did you figure out Renarin?
Oh, not till...
Oh, no, I did not.
To the very, very end. Just
no,
that was
to the point when he said, "I'm a Radiant," I was just sort of like, what? This is all getting a bit too convenient here.
Yeah, like, I didn't get it until it was pointed out, but I'm picking up little hints, like the fact that he isn't wearing his glasses.
Right.
And that he doesn't want it, like he's sickened and can't do much to help Adeline in that duel, the insane 4-on-1 duel. And it makes so much more sense when you know that he's got screaming going on because he's holding this and his friend is freaking out about it.
Yeah.
Let alone he doesn't know what he's doing.
All right. So, sorry, we'll talk more about Renarin in a couple episodes, but
yes.
So back to Shallan.
Yes.
So I love the very brief character arc with Bluth, though, because then when they come across the caravan and the deserters and the other group of bandits, and she gives her speech to inspire the deserters.
Oh yeah.
And Bluth stands up and runs, and it's just like, okay, that's cool. Because she's already shown him he could be more than he is, and then she gives this inspiring speech to show the deserters they can be more, and he just takes it to heart. And again, it's just that little bit of redemption.
Yeah.
He feels like he's gone too far in a certain direction, and he ends up giving his life saving somebody else. And
yeah,
it just keeps popping up in this book, and I love it.
Yeah, you can see it with we're working with the deserters as they go, and like you even see it you saw it more with Kaladin in the first book where he was getting Bridge 4 and lifting up their spirits, and now Shallan's doing it with the.
I mean, that's a running thing Brandon definitely likes, the fact that the only way to get something to change is to accept that change is something that can actually occur. And too many people just accept things for the way they are.
Yeah.
Now, along that vein, I want to talk about Gaz. Because Gaz is just such a prime example of that. Because we're very familiar with Gaz. I mean, we spent a whole book with Gaz in The Way of Kings. And we hated him. We saw him from a very, very specific perspective. We saw him from...
The only time we got his perspective was that one chapter, which is more about the fact that he's always jumping at things that are in his blind spot.
Yeah.
And we see that
Which
he's
is
in a
a
bad
real thing.
spot. Yeah, we had that discussion last time.
Yeah.
But... And we do see that he's in a bad spot. He disappears, and in our hearts, we're just like, "Yay, evil Gaz! The little weasel has been chased off.
He's just gone." Mm-hmm.
And suddenly, we see him from a completely different perspective, because we see him from the perspective of somebody who's giving him another chance, and him taking that chance.
And he shows up with her, and then Kaladin's just like, "Gaz?"
Well, it's just like
You?
It talks about how he's like trying to hide behind.
Yeah, he's like
Vatha.
Inching back.
Hey, Kaladin, and everyone starts turning around.
It makes me think of Thor Ragnarok when Loki sees the Hulk and his just immediate thought is, "I need to get off this planet."
Yes.
That's Gaz. I need to get off the Shattered Plains.
I cannot be here. Cannot be here.
Because suddenly, not only because Kaladin's here.
And not only has he survived all of Bridge 4...
He's now Dalinar's personal bodyguard.
Has a captain's tassel, and he's just like...
Which,
I don't know what's
no other
going
Dark
on.
Guys has, yeah. It's like, this is
Well, and is far above what Gaz's rank ever was.
Yeah.
Or ever could be, yeah.
Right.
But it's... I don't know. I first found it so hilarious. Hi.
Hi, don't want to be here. Nope.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the other thing I love. So, another trope Brandon loves is the perfectly arranged marriage. Because it was perfectly arranged between Raoden and
right.
Serene. Yeah, Serene. Mm-hmm. And it was where's the other one that was done like that? There was one more. Susebron and
right.
Actually, I guess it's just mostly with all his girl characters whose names start with S. They're all perfectly matched with someone.
Ciri, that's right.
Yeah.
Huh. Look at that.
Yeah. And so it just immediately she's like, nice. He's just like, ooh, how exotic.
I just love we have Adolin's perspective. Who is that?
Mostly because at that point it's like, a female in this camp I haven't chased off yet. This is interesting.
Well, and she has red hair. It's always
which he finds attractive. Yeah, and he's just like, what's
the trope? Heroes love redheads.
Yep. Well, but the thing that also makes sense is the fact that he's very interested in non-Alethi women because, well, he's had no luck with Alethi women.
The thing that's interesting is her hair is red, and she talks about how it's a sign of her impure bloodline. Mm-hmm. And his hair is blonde and black as a sign of his impure bloodline. It's just an interesting,
they have a conversation about it, actually, that she says, I've always been ashamed of it. Yeah, they both say that, our hair is both.
You're right.
But Adolin doesn't care because...
Right.
He's just like, whatever.
Well, and it's a sign of his mother, and he loved his mom.
Who he loves, yeah.
And he's also fourth in line for the throne, so...
Yeah.
So he's not worried about that.
No, he's never lacked for confidence, but I love... I don't know, I just find... Like, I normally hate this, like, just the doting and stuff like this, and I much more, like, associate myself with Kaladin, who, like, looks at them with doing stuff, and Kaladin's just like, oh my goodness, just, like, dying a little inside. He's trying to be embarrassed for them, but they don't have the shame for it.
The decency to...
And so he's just like, but I normally hate it, but with them, I don't know why, but it makes me chuckle. And it doesn't annoy me like it normally does.
Well, I think part of it is that Shallan isn't doing it to be coy.
No,
99% of the time.
Mostly
they're very she's
genuine.
going, I've got 5 other things I gotta do. I gotta go do them. And so she's not ignoring Adolin because she's trying to get his attention. She's ignoring him because she's doing things. She's busy. She's doing stuff.
Which gets his attention.
Yes. So it's the whole thrill of the chase thing kind of going on there.
Okay, the scene where they yes.
Sorry,
I want to know
I know what you're going to talk about. It's in the chat, and I love that scene.
No, I'm not talking about the scene in the chat.
Oh,
I'm talking about
sorry.
the scene where they're chatting using the what are the quills, the what are they called? The quills that you write and the other one writes. The span reads.
Yes.
The conversation they have, I'm just like, are they texting?
Yeah.
Like
They're
they're
totally
texting while
texting.
she's doing homework.
And it's even funnier, like, because I'd forgotten that he was probably in the prison when he was doing that. Right?
Yeah.
Was that then?
I'm pretty
Because
sure.
I think it was. Because it was after Kaladin was in prison.
Oh, I don't think I picked
And
up on
so
that.
Adolin put himself in prison. And so that's probably why he's got so much time to chat over Spanreed, is because he's got nothing else to do.
That makes sense.
Well, yeah, because when they get out, that's what something Kaladin noticed. He's like, well, he's still bathed, and he's like, but you know,
like,
still
but he
gives
was
him
still-
credit.
he was still
He gives
in
him
here,
credit
yeah.
for it, but at the same time, he's just like, of course he's still bathed. Light eyes can't not bathe. Heaven
at the
same
forbid they
time-
don't take a bath.
Yeah, at the same time, Kaladin talks about how it's a much nicer cell than he's ever been in before, but it's still a cell.
Yeah,
And so he gives
yeah, he gives
Adolin
him full
the same credit.
He gives him
He's
full
like,
credit.
that's props, props for that you...
But yeah, he was clearly very, very bored.
Oh yeah, but it's just one of those things, like they're texting, like
Yep. And there's a poor Arden who's doing the texting for Adolin. He's probably sitting here going, I'm doing this with my time. Oh my goodness.
He's like, okay, write her that the guy's like, really write it.
Right. And I mean, there's parts of the conversation that were like talking about the Ardent who's having to write his own stuff of that Adolin's
That's
saying
right.
about the Ardent.
Which, it's bizarre. But the more bizarre part is that as she's doing it, she's waiting to see how the Ghost Bloods are trailing her.
Mm-hmm.
And then
But they're waiting for... Yeah, she finds out that they're actually down below waiting for her to pick it up so that they can then trail her.
Yeah. Aravar in chat mentioned something that I actually really agree with. He says, I really wish we got more of the Adolin prison thing, like maybe Cal actually talking to him before the release. I would have loved to study a little bit more about Adolin's experience with the prison.
Yeah, at the
Yeah.
same time, we know this book was as big as Brandon physically could get it, so...
Yes,
So, yeah.
I just wish that it existed. Why can't Brandon just snap some thoughts into existence? The little ones.
Yeah.
That'd be nice. Yes.
I'm
But yeah,
sure it's easy.
But no, there was the scene that was in the chat was about where Shallan doesn't follow the normal conversation with Adolin, where he's telling this glorious story of his battle and doing all these things, and she side rails it, going, so how do you go to the bathroom?
How do you poop?
How do you poop? And he's like, and he
How do I
starts,
what?
continues on, and he's like, wait, what? You just, and then he does tell her, and it's not glorious or
I have
glamorous
soiled
at all.
myself in battle.
He's
Like,
like, yep,
really?
I've done it a
3
grand total of 3 times. And later on, like he's like, I'm never gonna live that down, am I? And she's like, nope.
Nope, not gonna happen.
No, it's... Well, so the other thing I love about just her going from that angle is it's this very scholarly approach. Mm-hmm. It's like, why did we always gloss over this? I'm curious.
I'm curious how that works, because she wants to understand how it works, and as an artist, you want to know how things move and function as well too, and that would make sense that you'd know how you deal with all that.
Well, like later on when she's doing the
sketches?
sketching the bridges, she wants to get a series of sketches as it extends, so she can create a written record of exactly how they work. Now, we accidentally skipped over something very important.
Which?
How she came to be in Sabariel's war camp.
It's an amazing scene.
Sabariel. What is Sabariel? I've always been saying Sebriel in my head. There's an A there. I totally missed the A.
I just feel like
Sabariel
she sits there.
awesome.
She does a quick read of the situation. She knows that Sabariel is not the
He's
highest...
outside the chain, kind of.
Exactly.
That's the key. She just realizes there's only one single neutral party in this entire war camp, and it's this oaf. And then
But
she
I gotta
meets
go
him.
with it.
And she takes a gamble because she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm staying with Sabariel," and he almost
with
chokes.
Uncle
Uncle
Sabariel.
And he's just like, yes, This
Yes,
is what is
yes.
happening.
Yes, she is.
There's a lot. There's a
And she's
lot
like,
of
and he's
those
going to give me
gambits.
this much. Yeah, and she's like, and he's going to give me this much money. And he's like, I
That's
am.
almost as much as I
Oh,
give my
am I?
mistress, and I get something out of that
Yeah.
relationship.
Yes.
Such a great scene. As soon as she sits down, he's like, you better be worth it. I don't even pay my mistress that much, and I get something out of that. And then you meet his mistress.
And she's
She's-
magnificent.
She totally, like,
I love
Polona.
I just love the. First of all, that's another one. Kate Redding's Herdazian accent for her is really good.
Uh-huh.
And her and Sabariel going back and forth is a ton of fun. I just love he's just like, I'm the most henpecked man in all these war camps, and I ain't even married. I'm not going to marry you, so quit asking. And he's just like, I don't know why I keep you around. Because you love me.
You
That
love
can't be it. Like, I just love it.
And, like, he's looming in the background, and then... And Shallan's like, oh, so he said he was going to pay me X amount of money, and Polona's like, you got to tell me how much it is so it actually happens. And
And then he just peanut galleries from the background.
he's looming in the
it's
background, and he's complaining.
Wonderful.
It's hilarious.
They're perfect. That's the other thing. Bill and I did have this discussion off air where it was like he uses them the exact amount of times to where their bickering doesn't ever get annoying. It's always fresh and fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so good.
I hate to bring up Les Mis again, since I know neither of you are familiar with it, but there are two characters.
I know this much.
There are two characters in it who are actually rather villainous in Les Miserables, but it's like he's taken a friendly, cuddly version of the Thénardiers, the evil innkeeper and his wife,
Gesundheit.
who are like very, very just crass, filthy people. But
Not familiar with them.
he's made a cuddlier version of the Thénardier, and and they're just wonderful. They're just the perfect sort of comic relief who are still very important to the story.
Oh, yes.
Well, and the other thing, and this is the other thing she read correctly, they're very hands-off managers, and so it gives Shallan the freedom she needs to pursue the Ghost Bloods, and doing work for them, and doing scholarly work, and trying to find Urithiru, and trying to keep her courtship with Adolin not falling apart,
Yep.
and still working
figuring-
with Pattern to figure out her
Yeah, so-
powers.
So she's like, yeah, I don't have time to do anything other than all the things I'm doing.
I do like how he builds up her experimenting with her powers. It's I like it. It's scientific.
Well, and it starts off very, very slow. Again, it starts with Hoyd, who sort of encourages her, and he starts talking to her, and he draws this not false memory, but the happy place, sort of the ideal out of her.
Has
And
her
she
describe
starts she starts creating it. And then she's just like, no, this isn't real, and I won't even touch this because it's not real. And it just breaks her, and again, Hoyd sees how broken she is and just is kind to her and then leaves. But then it starts there, and then with the green on the ship where she's talking about
She's doing a drawing or something, wasn't she?
She fell
Yeah.
into thinking about her garden for some
Yes.
reason.
and how green
Yeah.
it is. And
And
then suddenly
starts being green.
what's the ship guy's name?
Yeah, it's not Yaz. Is
Yalb.
it?
Yalb.
Yalp.
Yalb comes up, and he's just like, what was that you were doing? Things looked green.
Green. And she's like, no, they didn't. No.
No, they didn't. No, you're crazy. What? No.
I don't know what we're seeing. No.
I also feel like it was a little bit of a mercy that Brandon threw in, because the drawings that she was doing, one of them, like just the random drawings that she did, one of them, it was people climbing out of the rocks, and she swore one of them looked like Yalb. Do you remember that?
To kind
Yeah.
of, where she's trying to make herself feel better about it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we
And
don't
I feel
know.
like it was just sort of a small mercy for Brandon. I personally think that because that happened, it did. Because at that point, she wasn't stretching beyond things that she actually knew. And so I feel like that was just sort of a...
And I could see the Xanthid kind of pushing other people if he's pushing her.
Yeah. So,
the The other thing that's interesting as far as her experiment with her powers and the Ghost Bloods is how much she sort of has to make it up as she goes, because the Ghost Bloods are trying to put her in difficult situations so that they can understand her. And so, like, I love, like, when she realizes she gets that driver killed. Because
she feels terrible about it.
Well, and suddenly she realized, and it's another nod towards what Kaladin kind of accuses her of playing with people.
Yeah.
Without,
And then just not caring if she cares.
Yeah, it's where she cares, but she does, like, that. He's not wrong in that she doesn't think through the actions that she's taking, which is common for Light Eyes, because Light Eyes are usually not thinking those things through. They don't think how it's going to affect people.
A lot of their actions don't have consequences for them.
Yeah, and she's 18. That's the other thing to remember.
Yeah.
She's 18 years old, and she's been, I mean, while her life has been so traumatic, she's also been sheltered. So she doesn't always think through, oh, they're following me, maybe they'll try and kill me. It's, I just need to get out of it and distract it. Doesn't think, well, I'm setting them up to die.
It's one of those
occur to her yet.
What's the phrase? It's not guilty but responsible.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's where, because it's like, yeah, is she responsible for him dying? She totally is. At the same time, she doesn't, like, she knows she doesn't know, and that's why she's trying to be careful, but she's not thinking things all the way through, because how can you? How could she anticipate showing off that she has this amazing photographic memory would end up getting someone else killed?
Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I love her meetings with Mraize, because Mraize is the exact Bond villain that I'm looking for.
And he's the dragon. He's not the big bad.
That we meet
group.
his Babsk, that's from South Scadrial, or not from South Scadrial,
of South Scadrian descent.
Yeah, and we meet her, and I just love how Shallan finally separates herself. My sister's gone insane.
Oh, and she won't take off this mask. And I can tell, like, there's
and she hears
line
this
saying,
quiet groan,
like, "Oh, you got to be kidding me!"
And so she starts raving, and she's like,
she totally plays into it, but you can tell she's not happy about it either.
Nope. But at the same time, because clandestine operations are a big thing, they also respect that Shallan keeps finding a way to
make it work. And
so that they can't figure out what she's doing.
And Shallan does check on her before she leaves her. She's like, "You can get out, right?" And she's like, "I can get out."
Oh, easily.
Come on.
Yeah.
Who do you think I am? No, it's great because they build up Mraize as very refined, completely amoral, but also fair. Like this weird juxtaposition.
She's got weird morality.
Well, it's because he talks about that with Shallan, where he says morality isn't an axis that we care about in the Ghost Bloods, because it's too changing with the times. All we care about is loyalty and power. These are the only things we care about. And so he's completely amoral, but he also understands if he's not fair, that's not going to help their cause, because they have to be consistent with how they do things. And so he's perfectly fine with them trying to kill her when she's not one of them, but as soon as she's one of them, no, you're one of us. You're you're going to be doing things for us, little knife. And it's just such a, like I keep saying, Bond villain. That's what he is. He's the first real Bond villain that Brandon's really written, I think. Because he's refined as all get out while still looking menacing. He's just Blofeld all over again.
No, it's true.
I love
so
Mraize.
speaking of Mraize, I meant to look it up and I just looked it up now, but I've been trying to figure out what was in his collection in that first base she goes into.
Oh, so many things.
So what I'm seeing on here on 17th Shard is people have, so there's the sand, and obviously that's from,
which is from
white sand.
Taldane.
Or Taldane, yeah. And then there was the dagger that was silver, and we're pretty sure that's, or at least the guesses seem to be that it's from Shadows for Silence.
Right.
Yeah.
From,
Shadows of Silence.
From Threnody.
From Threnody, yeah. I'm getting my worlds all mixed up. And then there's the Flowers of Edgley from, I mean, these are all guesses.
Yeah, they're flowers that are preserved in some sort of liquid.
Yeah, and she's like, they look weird. And so it's, that makes the best guess for a flower. And there was
There
was
was
a
like
crystal?
the eye socket of a Santhid, which
Oh yeah.
after
weird-
one saves Shallan, and the fact that sailors say that they're lucky in killing one is like a really bad omen, that
It makes her
says
feel
something.
terrible.
Right.
Oh yeah. And there were a couple other things, but something about
yeah.
an adium, a guess of maybe an adium crystal, but I'm not sure.
Like a
about that
geode, you
one.
mean? Like one of the geodes?
Yeah, I'm just looking
even-
through this really
Oh,
fast.
I
And there's
remember
the-
them saying a
and
crystal.
there's golden hair, and so people are guessing it's maybe royal locks.
Very
but-
possibly, yeah. The royal locks.
But
The other thing,
Anyway, and there's
so this isn't as far as the coolness of the Ghost Bloods, which are very cool. It's the fact, just something that hints at how good Brandon is with writing. Just a little detail when she's going into the Ghost Bloods' little den, and they have this big, mean-looking dude, and she cracks a joke as Vale and gets him to laugh, and he responds, but she makes it's like he had a high-pitched voice that didn't fit his
It's like,
his
that does
body
not.
at all. Which it's just one of these details Brandon throws in that makes the world feel much more real, because he
Right.
threw in that this guy had a mismatched voice.
We also
Which is-
we talked about this in a previous episode. We did you notice the reference to Amaram's collection of flutes?
Yes, this time I
Okay.
noticed it.
yes, I caught the flutes this time. Yes.
I just remember how blown away we were. I'm just like, guys,
We're like, what?
his
Amaram has a
collection
collection
of
of
flutes?
Flutes? It's just not what you would see coming.
Nope.
Yeah.
And he, for the record, Kaladin does get absolutely ripped into by Hoyt for losing his flute.
Oh yeah.
Oh. It was like if you... Oh!
If
that was-
someone hadn't lost it.
I want to go back to a line from her meeting with Hoyt, actually, that really stood
Okay.
out to me. So when she first meets him, he startles her, and she says, and Hoyt says to her, "There's no need to fear me. I'm woefully ineffective at harming people. I blame my upbringing." Okay, so we know Hoyt can't hurt people. Why
Yeah.
would he blame his upbringing? Is it a play on words, where he was lifted up to be somebody, but as such he can't hurt people? Is it just his family? It's just, I just found it a very interesting little phrase that came up.
I don't even want to guess because I don't know enough to feel like I could guess.
Clearly we don't, but he does tend to like to play with the concept of him. Like, he likes to tell people things that are 100% truthful, but at the same time 100% useless to them.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's out of context, and so they have nothing to go by for what he's actually meaning.
And so suddenly that line, I feel like there's something important in that line. I blame my upbringing.
Oh, there's probably something.
So we probably don't have enough now, but just something I
Later.
wanted to point out. He says that. It's there.
No, but the Ghost Bloods thing is just so interesting to me. Brandon has said the Ghost Bloods name hints at their origin some,
Yes.
which is an interesting thing because Ghost and Blood together. Ghost, the only thing we've seen with, what we would call ghosts, the only two things I can think of would be something like
Cognitive
Kelsier,
Or Threnody, right?
Yeah, or
shades on
Threnody, which they're both flavors of cognitive shadows. And then Blood, the only thing I could think of is Hemalurgy. And so part of me, because he did give that clever line where someone asked, has Kelsier ever, what would happen if Kelsier got into the Ghost Bloods? And he said he'd be running it within a month. Part of me wonders if that's Brandon being coy. Because if he did, yeah, he'd be running it within a month. But I don't think that's the case or anything like that, as much as I would love it to be. But I actually do. I think there might be something tying them to Kelsier. We see a Southern Scadrian that's apparently someone important, and I have a theory that something to do with the Ghost Bloods is based off something with Kelsier, and it's one of those things where they may be taking this in a very different direction, because they're also very interested in secrets.
That's
and
true.
the knowing of them. And so
Yeah.
I don't
There
know
always
what
is
my
one.
theory is, but I have a pet theory somewhere there. I just haven't caught it yet.
Fun. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the adventure in the chasms and the birth of so many triangle ships. Mm-hmm. You know, so many what's the word? Love triangles, ships,
yeah.
Because so many people are like, oh, now there's a love triangle. Is it going to be Shallan and Adolin? Is it going to be Shallan and Kaladin? And
is it going to be Kaladin and Pattern?
I'm not getting on that boat.
She soul casted anyway.
But it's just
no.
Again,
So it's funny. For me, the first time reading it through, I totally was like, "Oh, maybe she will." I totally fell into the thinking it was a love triangle thing. Mm-hmm. But this time around, I didn't feel it as much. I felt more like they understood each other, and they got along a lot better. Mm-hmm. And it was more they were too similar to. Sorry, I keep hitting this. To have romance happen, but it was just mutual respect and understanding happening more than
the romance is teased a little bit after, actually. It's teased just a little bit because, you know, Kaladin sort of has a flare of jealousy when he sees Shallan spending time and, you know, doting on Adolin, and Shallan finds herself thinking about Kaladin when she should be thinking about Adolin and comparing them. That said, I think that's sort of the resolution, though, is that it's more of a mutual respect.
I'm actually interested, since you've read more of the relationship stuff there, Amy.
Oh dear.
Did you like that? Like, did you like the potential of a love triangle?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So
you can explain that, because I don't read any of these books at all, and when I see love triangles, I just immediately start just like, storm it. What are we?
So the big part for me that changes is how quality the characters are and the quality of the relationship between both sets, or anyway, between both potential boys or girls in the triangle, you know? Because a lot of the love triangles that happen are in YA books that just get like churned out, and they make me cringe. Like I'll like reading them in the moment, but then I go, oh, that's stupid. Why did they do that? Or other things. And so those love triangles, they're obnoxious. But well done love triangles that don't make it focus on the relationship, but more about furthering the plot, and then the relationship is happening kind of on the side. Those can be good.
Well, and the other thing I've noticed that Brandon likes to do is he'll throw things in that are just sort of a normal thing that don't always necessarily mean something. And with their relationship, there can be a spark of attraction, even a romantic attraction or a non-romantic attraction that doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't have to be a triangle. You just see somebody, there's a burst of attraction, and that's the end of it.
Yeah.
And so
that being said, I was bad and I haven't finished my second reread of Words of Radiance. So where I'm at right now is where they're getting out of. You're not
supposed to tell them that, Amy.
I'm sorry. Real life happens.
It's okay.
I skimmed the summary to make sure. So yes. Anyway, but I haven't reread the continuing sparks between Kaladin and Shallan after they get out of the chasm. So
frankly, my favorite part of the chasm is just the two of them trying to figure out how they saved the other one and trying to hide the other, like, the specialness from each other.
I noticed it a lot more this time when they were fighting the chasm fiend, that she pulls out some light weaving that he doesn't realize is there. Like, there's the Kaladin that's right there, so the chasm fiend hits that instead of him, and he's like,
and he thinks, how did I do that?
How did I do that? And then, oh, I must have caught her in the fall. Oh no, I must have caught him in the fall. And then, like, she's at the end of the chasm. She's at the end of the chasm, and he's like, well, how did she not get squashed there? But she's not actually there. Just.
The other thing is interesting seeing it, because that's when Kaladin breaks his bond with Syl, and so it's him at his lowest point, and he's very short at that time, and he really likes in those scenes to play with the fact that they're kind of pissed off at each other constantly. She's constantly mad at him for being dour at everything and making fun of people and being so sour and hateful, and at the same time, he's going through a horrible time at that moment, And
Oh, yeah.
He's stuck with the fact that his oaths sort of put him in between a rock and a hard place. And he doesn't understand what that means.
That said, when they're talking about being broken, and he looks in her eyes and suddenly
I'm
realizes
looking for that quote right now.
she is hiding, like she knows what it means to be broken. She's not just this
She
spoiled
full
little
on
girl.
says it like because he's been commenting saying, "Oh, you've got it easy. You did never have it rough. You were spoiled." And she's like, "Oh, really?" And she kind of lays out all of the emotional trauma that she's been through in vague terms, but still concrete enough that he understands that she means it.
Well, and that's the
And
thing is
then-
he looks in her eyes and suddenly he sees something and he's like, she's not just seen hurt, she has been broken. And somehow, in spite of all that, she looks, she's seeing the
She
best.
smiles. She smiles anyway. I
How
can't
can
find the
she
quote.
do that and smile?
Yeah.
And Aravar brings up in chat a good point. He compares her to Tien. And how Tien, in his darkest times, Tien was able to be the light that pulled him out of that darkness.
Yeah.
And it's just... suddenly their relationship shifts when he makes that realization. And I think her paradigm shifts a bit, again, when he points out the ways that she uses people. And he points out the incident with the boots.
The boots, yeah.
And it pulls her up short. And she's just like...
She's like, "No, I did do that."
You're right, yeah. And
Yeah.
And
I was putting that.
it's just really cool to see suddenly their relationship in just a couple moments become something completely different.
Yeah, she does also call him out on making contradictory assumptions about her too, which made him kind of go, "Oh, yeah, I kind of was making tons of assumptions and they don't make sense even with each other."
Yeah, it's like basically there's no way that she can win. If she does one thing, she's wrong. If she does something the other opposite, she's wrong.
Yeah.
Well, and that's normal for people in the situations Kaladin has been put into.
Right.
Is he does make these assumptions. Light Eyes have been the source of all his problems all his life. And he's seen firsthand, like he has that scene with Dalinar talking about how, you get to see the king way more than others. Like you get to
You get to see him as a person, yeah.
And it's really bad for Kaladin because he's seen Elhokar's pettiness and childishness really up close. And it's just confirming everything in his mind of what he assumes.
Right.
But he's also starting to see Dalinar and Adolin and Shallan, and he's having these two separate things pulling him in the opposite directions, and that's what's straining his bond. At the same time, for her, she's like, she talks about how, I've been through all this tough times. Kaladin has faced his tough times, and he's stuck in between the dichotomy of this two worlds he stepped in. Whereas Shallan, her order, like she's been hiding from those issues, and the way she advances is to finally face those truths.
Right.
And so for her at that moment, she's on the path of starting to face those truths, and it's interesting how the two of them help one another see the other side, because he's not really helping her see the other side that much. Like the boots thing was more Tin's fault than hers.
Right, but it still called her out.
Yeah, it called her out a little bit. And it's just one of those, but what he is getting her to do, and he's not doing it consciously, he's getting her to confront truth. That this is really important, and you gotta stop, looking away from things because you need the full breath. And so when she summons her shard blade and gives it to Kaladin, that's Kaladin understands, oh, this is a big deal because she's a woman who has a shard blade, and in their society that's really weird. And there's
just don't do that.
Yeah, there's something weird going on. He sees it from the social aspect. He doesn't know the emotional aspect behind what that means.
Yeah.
And the fact that her summoning that is terrifying for her, because she has to acknowledge a truth that, yeah, this is part of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole chasm stuff is stuff that's really difficult reading because they're at each other's throats a lot.
Oh yeah.
But then they follow it up.
But it's pithy and fun at the same time. Like when they're trying to do, it felt that way to me. Like I was enjoying the lines.
Mm-hmm.
See, and for me, I actually feel this was the worst line writing for Shallan as far as being clever in the book.
Well, yeah, she was less clever, but it was fun to see her still trying to do it, even when like that was her coping mechanism, that she was maintaining that as kind of a character trait. At least, I thought that it was keeping her true to herself, that she was doing it even when she's super stressed out and not at her best. Yeah, and it was fun to see Kaladin trying to keep up with it more, and not doing it just with Bridge 4.
Yeah, well, and Kaladin's a smart person. He's way more learned than he should be for someone of his background, but at the same time, he's not a scholar. He's got sort of a scientific way of approaching things at times because of his father's training as a surgeon, but definitely nothing to her level at all.
Right.
Yeah.
She's I mean, she got before learning what she could do, she got Yesta Kalin of all people to take her on as a ward. That says something about how actually clever she is.
Well, yeah, and that's just a great argument to
that she gives Navani, isn't it?
Or is it Dalinar? To Dalinar, I think.
Yeah. And it's
she recognizes it and uses it as a strong argument in her favor.
Yeah.
You know, and all the time you've known her, how many wards has she taken? The fact that she was willing to do that should be an endorsement of me.
Yeah.
That's the other thing I do like, as far as she really does take to heart this book. I need to finish what Yesna started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it does come, to the end there when she actually gets the Oathgate to work.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle of one of the most insane avalanches Brandon has ever written.
Yes, indeed.
I can't think of an avalanche that Brandon's written that's more crazy. Then again, I didn't read the book of Avalanche, but
Oathbringers is also pretty avalanchy. But
I don't feel there's as many like holy crap moments in it.
I agree with you on that.
Whereas, because in the avalanche of this one, we find out, okay, shard blades are spread. There's a herald alive that's doing stuff. That freaking Nightblood is here, and just all the other crazy stuff that happens at the end.
We'll talk about that one later.
And so I don't know. It's just there's all those just wham moments right at the end of this one that just kept coming.
Plus, one of the best fight scenes Brandon's ever written.
Oh, we're gonna get to that.
And so, but so much wonderful stuff going on. Before we go, I do want to talk a little bit more about the flashbacks, just because, holy cow, Brandon got dark. This is some of the darkest writing that Brandon has ever written. Oh my
goodness!
The fact that as she's
what, you don't put your children to sleep with that lullaby.
Well, no? that's one thing that is interesting. Reading the book and listening to the audiobook. In the audiobook, they just recite the lullaby as a poem. In my head, I had not an actual melody, but just some sort of hint of a melody, so I heard it musically. In the audiobook, it's more of a chant, and it's a different kind of creepy.
Oh.
But when I actually read the book, it was just this creepy music box, messed up thing
ghostly
going on.
Children laughing in the background.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the fact that as her, just the parallelism of her father singing this lullaby to her after she's gone through this mind-breaking trauma of her mother attacking her and then her defending herself and killing her mother.
Yeah.
And then her father, who does love her. That's the other thing, is her father is so broken and destroys everything around him and just basically destroys his family. but he still loves her. It's just this heartbreaking, just tragedy of what happened, because there was a happier family. The image that Shallan began to draw for Hoyd had been a possibility. And in a quick instant, it no longer was.
Gone.
And everything was broken. Helleron left. Balat became, this almost a sociopath, but not quite.
Yeah.
Jushu fell to gambling. Wickham became suicidal. And it's just this very...
Were the leaves that Wickham had, were those the same ones that Kaladin?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were Blackbane.
They get more potent as they age.
Well, and apparently you even hear that Wickham has, I think it's Wickham, has scars on his wrists.
Yeah.
And
there's scar- like he's lost weight, but he's got scars and things.
Yeah, it's just you realize how absolutely broken his family is. And the girl who broke it and doesn't remember breaking it is trying to put them together. Putting them back together. And it just, I don't know, there's so much tragedy in there. And that's, again, the whole concept of redemption. And part of Shallan's path to redemption is acknowledging that it happened. And that's that's the truth that she has to acknowledge, is that she did this.
'Cause that's the thing. It's very different from, like, say, Dalinar's storyline in Oathbringer, where Dalinar did horrible things in the past, and he was a full adult. She did it as a very small child, and in a very defensible situation.
In self-defense, yeah.
Yeah. Trying to protect her father from a very bad situation. And so it's more she needs to forgive herself for things that, like, she did, but they weren't horrible things. They're very defensible, and she needs to accept that in herself. And that's a lot of times you're your own harshest critic.
Yes.
It's actually, her storyline's more like Teft, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Except that Teft lives with that
Yeah.
thought every day. Like, they handle it in very different ways. Neither of which is healthy.
No, but they're both avoiding the issue. And it's just, they gotta, at some point, live with themselves. And that's a difficult thing for both of them.
Yeah. Just, I feel like the flashbacks in this book are just so much more emotional and raw than almost anything else that Brandon's written. I think the thing that comes closest probably is some of the darker parts in Legion. But that's a different story. Anyway, we should probably start wrapping up. We've gone pretty long on this.
Yeah, we don't have time to talk about it, but the scene where Shallan talks to Hoyd about, can beauty be taken from a man?
Yes.
That was a good scene. I liked that
That was
one.
a very good scene. And then, of course, again, at the very end of that scene, the last thing he does is tell her where her brother is, and that he'll give her brother word of her.
Yeah.
Just one last bit of kindness, and then he goes.
Yep.
I love it. All right. Now, though, guess what time it is, guys?
Giveaway!
It's time for a giveaway.
Woo!
It is time for stuff. And not
Bill,
just
what
any
are we giving away?
Not just any stuff. We're giving away a copy of Brandon's most recent book. Not just a copy of Brandon's most recent book.
Signed one.
It's a signed copy. There somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, you got it. You're good.
Yeah. A signed copy that is signed, "Thanks for listening, and remember, there's always another secret." That may sound familiar to some of you.
And do you know what's cool?
Just a smidge.
What's cool?
That's not even the coolest thing in that bag.
Well, if you think about it, this actually wasn't one of the things in the bag.
That wasn't even in the bag. You
This
guys
wasn't in the
got
bag.
that.
But you put it in the bag.
I put it on the bag. On the very top.
I still haven't even seen the bag.
That's true.
I haven't.
Well, if you stop using this thing of call it kids as an excuse to do things.
Oh, and guys,
Sorry.
just so you know, the bag's pretty cool itself, too.
We'll eventually give that away.
Yep.
Once it's empty, we need
But-
something to hold stuff in.
But yeah, so now it is time for a giveaway. We've had people entering via social media, and our patrons automatically got one of their 3 entries. So I've made a list, and which one of you is going to draw the number?
I already
I
drew
don't-
the number.
You already drew the number.
Yeah, I did it before the stream when you told me the number.
I didn't tell you a number. You mean
You
when I
gave
told you how
total.
many there are?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I used
don't
the
make
random
it sound
number.
like we're rigging this thing, Jordan.
We're not rigging it. They're in different floors of a house.
I drew the number when you told me what it should. No, that's not what happened.
You told me the total number of people I should
Yes.
draw out of.
Just so we're clear, this has been done purely randomly.
They do a number generator thingy.
All right.
Random.
Well, Jordan, what's
randomizer?
the number?
The number is 37. That is 37.
Let's see. Huh. That's the name of somebody who's already won.
Oh, okay. Who?
So that would be Evan G, one of our patrons.
He
Lucky
was the
son of a
patron.
bee.
So lucky son of a gun, he got another win. So congratulations. We will be sending that off to you. We'll contact you to get the address. And yeah, thanks for listening.
Yeah.
As always, we want to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to keep creating new episodes. This show is and will continue to be free for everybody. But if you want to support us, even with just $1 or $2 per episode, please go to patreon.com/Cosmere Studies. By becoming a patron, you'll immediately get access to our Discord channel. We've got some great discussions going on there. We've got some great people. It's a great group. And we'd love to have you join us. You'll also get bonus content like the 6-7, which is a collection of 7 pieces of content that we find every week. And we want to share with you. This is random internet stuff that we find, really cool stuff, funny stuff, anything that we're just like, ooh, the Sixers would like that. So we put it together. Not all of it is
That's
content
about
related.
the right emotion. Ooh.
Not all of it's content related. Some of it is, some of it isn't. And you'll also get early access to any bonus content we produce, bonus episodes, and that kind of thing. Beyond that, our patrons automatically are entered into the giveaways, just like the one that we had here. And now the giveaways are free to enter. Anybody can enter them. You can enter them up to 3 times so far. That's the current rules. Those may be subject to change in the future, but anybody can enter for free, and it's not closed. And of course, by becoming a patron, though, you help us continue to make the show, improve the quality of the episodes. As we get more patrons, we're hoping to be able to record episodes more frequently as well. So we're hoping to eventually move from every other week to every week. We don't know when that'll happen, but it'll take a little bit more doing before we're able to do that. But we're really hoping it can. So to all of our current and past patrons, once again, we just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
We are pulling together a bunch of what we call aluminum foil hat theories for a future episode where we're going to go through the mailbag and just start talking about people's speculations about what's going on in the Cosmere, about predictions of what Brandon's thinking and what is going to happen, about, who this person is, why they're here, what is going on, all that kind of stuff. So send us your emails at cosmerestudies@gmail.com. Let us know what you're thinking. We'd love to hear from you. You can also send us feedback and any ideas you have. Just we want to hear from you. Now, each of us has personal projects going on the side. Jordan, where can we find your stuff?
Twitch.tv/Splice Stream, doing more amiibo content, and more excitedly, I will be doing a Marbles on stream next week, where everyone gets assigned a marble and it goes down a hill, and it's strangely more interesting than it should be. Look, we reached my goal for number of subs in the channel, and that was the thing I threw in as a thing to motivate people. It's slowly becoming the more popular part of my amiibo streams, the halftime show where I get things ready. It gets real competitive with the randomness of marbles going down lanes.
And where can we find you?
I already said twitch.tv/Splice Stream.
Any other like social media or just
Your Twitter and stuff?
Twitch?
There are, but they're not getting utilized properly, so let's just
Fair
focus
enough.
on the one I use.
Fair enough. How about you, Amy?
I'm on the social media stuff because that's what you gotta do as a cosplayer.
She does use them responsibly.
I try. So on Facebook, I'm at Coincidence Cosplay and Props. On Twitter, at Coincidence Cosp, because my name is too long. And on Instagram, at Coincidence_Cosplay. And currently, I'm doing Queen Eleanor wigs, restyling my Lady Tremaine wig, which looks like a scary mess right now. That's just like huge and horrible because it's big and bouffants are bad for fake hair. And I have a wig coming for a Cosmere one. So
Nice.
we'll see. So yes, wigs, all the wigs. I hate
Very
wigs.
cool. And as for me, I've got a bunch of board game reviews up over at the Innkeeper's Table at www.innkeeperstable.com. I am still posting games on social media, and so go check those out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Innkeeper's Table. And I just realized I don't think Amy told us her social media handles this time,
No,
did she?
I did.
She totally
I did.
did.
Oh, I
I did
just
them
completely
first.
spaced. I am
did 'em, don't
all
worry.
here, guys. I'm right here. My
doing
head
great.
is right here.
Go.
Anyway, also for those of you who can't become patrons just yet, consider going over to iTunes. Drop us a 5-star review. It really helps us out. Now, before we go, any final thoughts on Shallan's story? We've still got a lot of Words of Radiance to talk over, but anything on...
I mostly
I love
still
pattern.
just
I just
pattern's
love
the
pattern.
best.
Yeah.
Pattern.
I want to see I want to see a combination conversation between Pattern and Nightblood. And the other thing I want to know is how on earth Evan G became a ferrochemical, or what is it, be a chromium fairing? Because he's
Fortune.
clearly tapping luck.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. For me, I'm just... I love seeing Hoid scenes, and these are some of the very best Hoid scenes we've seen. Mm-hmm. Just when Hoid and Shallan get together, I think we see Hoid at the hoidiest he's been. So, yeah. Anyway, so... In addition to the live episodes of the show that stream on twitch.tv/Innkeeper's Table every 2 weeks on Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, our listeners can find our videos on YouTube or the audio versions of the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and anywhere else that you can find your favorite podcasts. Just search for Cosmere Studies. You can also follow us and contact us through Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the profiles at Cosmere Studies. Now, for our next episode, we're going to continue our discussion of Words of Radiance, this time focusing on Kaladin's plotline and his journey to becoming a Radiant. So join us for the live stream next week, actually, on April 8th, 2019. The podcast episode and video will come out on our regular schedule, but the recording will be a week early. In the meantime, though, on behalf of Amy, Jordan, and myself, thanks for listening, and remember... There's always
always
another
another
SICS.
SICS.